Hailing from the great cold state of Alaska, I am the Frozen Gamer, and today I want to talk to you guys about Destiny 2 and why it is that I believe it would be better for character progress to restart for the sequel, rather than carrying forward. Now, I did a video previously where I discussed why it is that character progress should move forward, but I also believe that there are a number of reasons why it would be better if everyone had to start from scratch. So the number one reason, above all else, is the simple fact that people are fatigued. There are many people out there who have been playing Destiny since year one, since the alpha, in some cases, or at least since the beta, who at this point just feel like there's nothing really worthwhile anymore. And the reality is that with year 3 coming out, apart from raising the light level, adding a few new things, it just wasn't as drastic of a change. With the Taken King, it breathed new life into the game for me and for many others, because there were so many things that were changed for the better with the 2.0 update, bringing all of these necessary things like changing how light levels work and making it possible to infuse weapons and everything else. And of course, they made further improvements on that within year 2, including having the 1-to-1 infusion instead of having it being incremental averages like it was originally. But the fact of the matter remains that there are just a lot of people who are just tired of it. They played so many hours, hundreds or thousands of hours, and they just want something new and different. Some friends of mine who have played far more than I have actually flat out just decided not to play Rise of Iron. And while initially I didn't quite understand why, I do realize that after having actually played the majority of Rise of Iron, with the exception of having completed the raid, as I just haven't had a chance to do it yet, I can see why it is that they were hesitant to buy Rise of Iron. And the reality is Rise of Iron doesn't add very much. It's largely very much the same thing. The campaign was super short. The additions just don't feel that significant. And in some ways, I do understand that fatigue. I still love the game. But I think that in many ways, the ability to have a fresh start would be monumental. It would make such a huge difference for those people who are fatigued with what Destiny has become because they've been playing so much. And if all the rumors about how Destiny 2 is going to change are true, or even if when we actually find out something about the game and find out what they're changing about the game, I'm sure that that's going to be a big driver for people to move forward into Destiny 2, even though they'd have to restart. The other thing is that I've actually found, with recently having made a sub-account under my son's name, just so that I could play new and fresh with a friend who just got the game, that it feels so much different playing the game with nothing. Being back at that point where it's not just like when you started a new character before and you could still get stuff from your other characters once you reached level 20 or later level 40. Now it's much different because of the fact that I don't have access to any of that. I can't, go to my vault because it's on a completely different account. And so now I'm at a point where I'm actually having to take time to use different types of weapons, using a lot of whites and greens, and finding myself actually enjoying it because I don't feel as fatigued. It just feels new in many ways. And granted, I've done all of these quests, I've done the strikes, I've done the raids a number of times, and so in many ways those things will feel old hat to some degree when I actually get to that point. But even with that being the case, it still is fun going back and starting over from scratch and not having to try to pick between all these great pieces of gear, because every drop I get is actually meaningful. And that's a big thing. And so for me, this could be a very good thing if we have to start from scratch for Destiny 2. Another thing that's a good reason for character progress to restart is that most likely Destiny 2 is going to come to PC and maybe, just maybe, even the Nintendo Switch. And whether it comes to Nintendo or not, that one's much less likely, but the PC version is pretty much guaranteed to happen because it was a console exclusive for the first game. But Destiny 2, there's no reason why they wouldn't add that market, because undoubtedly there are a ton of PC players who did not get a chance to play Destiny because they didn't have a console and they didn't want to buy a console just for one game, but would happily start playing Destiny if they actually decide to bring it to PC with Destiny 2. And the great thing about that is that it does make it so that both PC and potentially Switch players can start at the same point as those who are playing on PS4 and Xbox One. There's no huge gap there where basically, unless you use like the Spark of Light or whatever the equivalent is for Destiny 2 to bring yourself up to the right level, you're not going to be at a point where everyone is leagues and leagues ahead of you in terms of their character progress. Now, of course, obviously, there will always be new players, and there will always be times when you basically have to start from scratch to some degree. But even so, it definitely makes a difference being able to see that everyone is at the same point, that nobody was able to bring their progress forward from the previous game. The other thing is, there are people who left during the year 1, or left during year 2, or even left when year 3 came out, and really wanted to just kind of, because of that fatigue, like I talked about before, they decided to leave, and with Destiny 2 making it so that no progress carries forward, it would make it a lot easier for for these people who played in year 1 or year 2 and left the game to come back into the game without feeling like they have to do all the stuff that came prior. And that is also something that really applies to new players, is that new players don't have to go back through all the content of Destiny 1 in order to play Destiny 2. They'll just be able to jump right in and, not feel like they are so far behind everybody else because of the fact that they didn't get to play the first game, or they didn't play the first game for whatever reason. And so those new players will feel a lot less intimidated by this whole thing. The other thing that is a definite point in the favor of leaving progress from Destiny 1 behind is that, players who have been wanting to switch platforms, maybe because they have a bunch of friends on a different platform, or maybe just because they like something about the other platform better, or even that they want to support a new platform, can do so without feeling like they're having to leave everything behind. Now, personally, one of the things that I thought a lot about was whether or not I want to continue on PlayStation when Destiny 2 comes out. And if I find that the progress doesn't carry forward, meaning that I won't really be losing any of the stuff I already have, like including all the exotics and everything else, that would actually make it easier for me if I wanted to switch over to either PC, or if I wanted to switch to the Switch, if it actually comes to the Switch. Whether or not that's really going to be the case, that's hard to say, but the main thing is that it gives me the opportunity to try a different platform. I think it would be fantastic to play Destiny on PC, actually be able to run the game at 60 frames per second. Granted, most likely Destiny 2 will be set for 60 frames, just because of the fact that it's not having the legacy consoles holding its content behind. But even so, playing on PC is still better. I think that they've done a fantastic job with making the controls work well on PS4 and Xbox One, and even PS3 and 360, but I would definitely, I still cannot deny that a first-person shooter is best played on a PC. There's just no question about it. Mouse and keyboard will always be more precise and have more functionality. much more easily. Now, obviously, if they choose not to do that, then, no problem. But it would definitely be interesting to have the option to switch platforms if I so chose. And same thing goes for anyone else who has been playing on Xbox or has been playing on PlayStation and wants to switch over to a different system. The other thing is, this is a really big one, is that by leaving everything behind from year one, it encourages players to try out new gear. I mean, those of us who have been playing for a long time, we, in many cases, have a tendency to just stick to what we know we like, what we know works. And if they carry that stuff forward from year one, then it's just going to be really easy to kind of get stuck, continuing to use all the same gear instead of actually trying to move forward and use new stuff. The Taken King, I think, did a really good job introducing a lot of new weapons that were good, but there were also a number of things that just got left behind, and many of those have already come forward between the April update earlier this year and with Rise of Iron, and with the Dawning coming up, that to bring it forward, Icebreaker. It's definitely cool that they're doing these things, but even so, in many ways, it's really easy to just get stuck in a rut using the same guns all the time. And if we actually all had to start from scratch and could no longer use the guns we had before, or if we had to basically re-obtain them rather than having all access to all the ones that we earned in year one, that would definitely be something that could encourage people to try out some different guns and to find a new meta, if you will, especially in PvP, because in Crucible, there are definitely some guns that just show up way more than others, and I think that it's changed a little bit with the Rise of Iron, but even so, it's still nice to actually see differences and not see the exact same guns all the time, not see Mida Multi-Tool and Matador 64 or what have you, these same guns over and over and over. It just gets so boring being killed by the same things every time, especially those that are just not unique. And it's so much more interesting, when you're killed by something that's completely out of left field, something you don't expect. But the point, more than anything else, is once again just that it's nice to have the option to use different guns and to not feel like I have to go back to this other gun because I know it works well. As my final point, and I think this really fits in with stuff I've already said a bit, but I still think it should be emphasized, is that if Destiny 2 does not bring progress forward from Destiny 1, anyone can jump into Destiny 2 without having played Destiny 1 and not feel like they really missed anything in the same sense, because they won't have to go through all of that old content. They can just stick to all of the new content and enjoy it for what it is and not be bogged down by all these things that happened in the first 3 years that they didn't get to experience. And that's not to say that there won't still be people who will continue to play Destiny 1, or there won't still be people who want to go back and play Destiny 1, but it won't be something that's necessarily needed in the same sense. So now I want to hear the rest of your thoughts. What is it that you think are good reasons why character progress should restart for Destiny 2? And, similarly, as I gave that in my previous video saying why progress should move forward, I'd like to hear why it is that you think that. Feel free to comment on either video with either answer, and I'll be sure to respond to those comments, and we can have a great discussion about it. So this has been the Frozen Gamer, and I will talk to you guys next time.